Hello, everyone. Welcome to Something to Talk About Live. My name is Liz Owen. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Director of Communications at PFLAG National. It is great to have you here with us today, and we're going to have an amazing conversation with a really special guest. So I'm going to bring on, as always, my good friend and colleague, Jean Marie Nevada.
Liz Owen, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, and I'm ready for the game.
Oh, yes.
Okay, it's not a game. It's just an interview, really. But I did have to bring my own props, as you know, because I'm super excited that we're talking about my very favorite sport in the entire universe.
And you could just, in your brain, you could just pretend it's a game.
I can pretend it's a game, and I can fantasize about having an actual skill to throw a ball, which I do not.
I want B-roll of that. Have a great time with our guest.
Thank you, Liz. We'll see you later. Bye. Hey, everybody. My name is Jean Marie Nevada, and welcome to Something to Talk About Live. Every single week, we get together to talk about something related to LGBTQ equality. And this week, as I already kind of mentioned, we're talking about my very favorite sport in the whole world, which is baseball. And we have an incredible guest. We are using an article today, which you can actually grab online if you would like to. It's straightforequality.org/discussion series. It actually appeared in USA Today. It was Scott Gleeson's article entitled "It's About Damn Time for This. Bryan Ruby becomes the only active pro baseball player to come out as gay." And when you check out the article, make sure you actually watch the video. But to talk about the article actually is, and I'm so excited to introduce Bryan Ruby.
How's it going?
It's going really well. How are you, Bryan?
Good. I'm doing
Thank you so much for being here. So you're talking to us from Nashville now, right?
Yes, ma'am. From Nashville.
Excellent. Excellent. And I was listening to some of the music that you sent me, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit. So I'm so excited to have this conversation. So let's just start with this. The big news that you made this week, and it was pretty significant news, or when your article came out last week, was about the fact that you're coming out and you are right now the only out professional baseball player that there is, although today we had another announcement of another minor leaguer who actually made reference to you in his statement, which is pretty fabulous. So could you tell people about what got you to decide to come out to the public now? Because it's not that you were not out at all. It's just that this is a public conversation now.
Yeah. So I've been out privately for about 4 years now, little over 4 years, to friends and family and my teammates. And finally, it just seemed like the right time. You know, I was on really solid ground in my personal life. I got a great boyfriend. Shout out Max if you're listening. And, it just, everything felt right. The timing was perfect. I've been out to my teammates in college, and then this year, playing independent ball out in Oregon. I started coming out to them in June during Pride Month. So, once September rolled around, that was pretty much old news for most of the guys, and it just felt like the right time, and that's when I did it.
Well, and it really definitely made news because we've been having lots of conversations about out athletes. And certainly the fact that, at least in baseball right now, there hasn't really been anybody who was active and out at the same time, although we certainly know there have been many, including our friend Billy Bean. So could you talk a little bit about what some of the things that were on your mind as you were coming out? Because, you did mention that you were out to family, you were out to friends, you were out to some of your teammates, but obviously coming out is complicated, and coming out, I think, when we talk about in sports, becomes even more complicated because there's a lot of competing issues. So what was on your mind and what were you concerned about?
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm a ball player, so I was worried that there was a chance I'd get up there and get up to hit next game and get a 92-mile-an-hour fastball thrown right at my face. I didn't know really what to expect. Didn't have a point of reference to be able to ask somebody, so I was nervous about how I would be received. I thought that my teammates would have my back, and they totally did, but I was nervous about playing against other teams, and I just had such a positive experience after coming out. That game, I got a couple hits that day, and some of the other guys on the other team were giving me fist bumps and, pat me on the back. And it was just so much love. Like all of my worries, I was worried what the fans, if I was going to get booed. Quite the opposite, actually. There was two women that looked like a lesbian couple sitting down the third baseline in the stands, holding up pride flags when I was hitting, and it was just the biggest outpouring of love and support that I have ever felt in my life, and I am so glad I did it.
Let me tell you, I think a lot of us are really glad that you did it. And what a visual to think about, looking over and seeing the pride flags being held up for you. So can you talk a little bit about what people's reactions were in general? Because you had to come out to teammates, you had to come out to coaches. I mean, there's a lot of people when you're playing sports that are involved, in your day-to-day. How did people start reacting?
My teammates, so first and foremost, my teammates were, I was very worried about that. And this is not recent. This was like going back to June during Pride Month, but I kind of tried to it didn't feel quite right to stand up on my chair in the locker room and say, guys, I have an announcement. That's not really my style. So what I did was I have Billy Bean's old cleats, and he just so happened to give me, I have them right here. Actually, let me grab them real quick right here. These cleats have traveled with me last couple years. And what I did was I laced them up with a pair of rainbow shoelaces. So instead of really making an announcement in June, I just wanted to show pride, and I'm proud of who I am. And I put those in, and I started playing with them, and I never took them out. So my teammates saw that, and a couple of them asked, and I told them the truth. And when they found that out, I was actually going to take them out after Pride Month, but they told me to keep them in. So so I've been wearing them ever since. And that's first and foremost, it was good to get on really solid ground with my teammates, mm-hmm. and earn their respect as a ball player and as a good teammate, and show up to practice on time, and work hard, and all the stuff that you got to do as a baseball player anyway. And from my experience, once you show that you can do that and that you belong there with them, they will accept you.
Yeah. And I think showing up is so much of it, and just being honest. And I mean, just talking to you, sort of your approach to everything is so easy. It's just, you're just very easy to talk to. And I think that probably went a long way in it. You did mention Billy Bean, and I know that in the article, for anyone who hasn't read it, you actually tell a story about Billy. Could you share that story with people? Because when you were telling it to me, of course you saw this, got all emotional. So it's a great story.
So in college, I thought that I was the only one, because you look around, you Google gay baseball player, and you can't find anybody like you. So it was really intimidating to realize that, and to not be able to have resources to connect with other people like me in the thing that I love to do. So I heard about Billy, and I read his autobiography, and I sent him a handwritten letter that was just hey, I'm a college baseball player, your story inspired me. And I didn't even, at the time, I was so closeted that I didn't even put my last name or what school or team I played for. But I put a return address, and he surprised me by writing back to me and actually invited me to the commissioner's office. So it was pretty crazy as a college baseball player, walking into 245 Park Avenue, and taking the elevator up to the Major League Baseball commissioner's office. So just from that point on, I was able to talk to him and get his advice, and get the cleats, and wherever I was playing, just be able to look down and know that I had support. So it was a super positive experience.
And you were building on a legacy that he started. I mean, I think he started paving the way for other athletes, and you've added another step to what this is going to look like. So your article, the article about you in USA Today, talks about your family and about coming out. And since we are PFLAG, and we're all about our families, could you talk a little bit about what it was like coming out to your parents, what some of your fears were, what your reaction by your family was, and sort of what the role they've played in your life is? Because it's clear they have played a pretty significant role.
Yeah, my family's super tight. So, I dated girls in high school and my first 2 years of college. So they had met some of my past girlfriends. And I was really nervous to tell them. It meant a lot to me that they would know, but I didn't know how to go about doing it. So I read an article online that said that usually mothers like have some intuition and they might know, and they're easier to talk to. So I told my mom first, and it didn't go that great, to be honest, at first. She was surprised. Maybe I didn't tell her in the best way. It sort of just kind of came out, and she was sad because she was sad because like her heart was kind of breaking for me. She realized, I think, all in that instant, the struggle that I had gone through and had kept down and hidden for so long.
Yeah.
But I think she had an idea of like what my life was going to be like, with a wife and kids or eventually. Yeah. So I tried to explain to her, like, Mom, I still want to get married and have kids eventually. Like, it's still possible, luckily, due to people like yourself fighting for our rights, and previous generations, like paving the way for somebody like me to be able to get married and live the life that I want to live. But then I told my dad, and I was actually a lot more nervous to tell my dad because he's like an ex-athlete himself. He's a baseball coach. He's a macho dude. And there's just kind of that, I'm his oldest son. So there's that macho thing there. And he surprised me because he said that he thought he actually knew. So he said because I hadn't brought a girl back home, and introduced a girlfriend for a couple years, he thought that I might be gay. So he kind of knew, and he was able to help my mom, especially in those first couple months. They leaned on each other, and I think that everything's great with my parents now. I think it just took a little bit of time. There's a little bit of an adjustment period, but once they realized that I was the same guy that I am now that I was before I came out, they've been nothing but supportive, and have invited my boyfriend to our July 4th barbecue, and it's been such a positive experience all around.
I'm so glad. when we at PFLAG, we sometimes say when kids come out of the closet, parents go in for a little while they figure everything out. But eventually when they come out, they can be just some of our fiercest advocates. I always say, don't get in the way of the moms and the dads, because they will take you down if you get in the way of their kid. And it feels pretty good. So, you've talked and we've talked before, we've discussed one of the reasons that you did this is because you want to be part of making the environment better for other athletes, that this doesn't have to be a conversation. So we're not doing shows like this on it anymore. So as you look around at baseball, and even as you look around at sports, what kind of things do you think other athletes can be doing to make players feel safer about coming out? Like, have there Could there have been any signals that people could have given you that maybe would have made you feel like, oh, I've definitely got some allies here? Or can you point to any examples of things that you're seeing, particularly in baseball, that are giving you hope that this is starting to change and get better? Obviously, besides your own coming out.
That's a lot of questions there. Well, I think first and foremost, an issue that we still face is the language in the locker room. One thing that I noticed hearing some of that homophobic language was that I thought, as a closeted athlete, I thought, oh my God, if my teammates ever find out about me, they're never going to accept me. I'm never going to be able to play baseball again. And, it's going to be a problem in the locker room. And, just like I felt threatened. I felt like hearing that homophobic language on pretty much a daily basis from teammates was really tough. And I hear that from other athletes that have been messaging me. But the really cool thing that I experienced was that after I came out, I didn't even have to say anything about the language. Some of those slurs and phrases just stopped naturally. So I don't actually think that my teammates were homophobic. They're about my age. I'm 25, between the ages of like 18 and 31 or something like that. So most of us have been raised in environments where you can see queer people represented in the mainstream in some capacity. And I didn't experience actual homophobia from my teammates. So was one of my main concerns, but something that, straight allies can do is just kind of watch what you're saying in the locker room. But there has been a tremendous progress in the last couple of years that has helped me and players like me. Just all the pride nights happening in Major League Baseball and minor league baseball. Everything from the Dodgers, the big level, to small minor league teams in faraway places. So, baseball is really embracing inclusivity and equality, and same goes for the commissioner's office with Billy Bean, having a job there and fighting for people like me. So there's some really cool steps being taken. And I'm excited. I'm optimistic about the future of queer athletes, especially in baseball, because I think that the page has turned and we're in an environment where so many people want to see people like me succeed and be visible that, it's going to bring a new era of acceptance and visibility in places where you might not have had visibility, like baseball.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And that actually sort of was the last thing about baseball that I wanted to say. Do you feel that with more athletes coming out, I actually did some quick homework before this. There were 181 out athletes that we knew of in the Olympics. There were 36 in the Paralympics. Just today, Kieran Lovegrove came out. So there are more and more people who are starting to come out. Do you really feel like we are at the verge of something big? The page really is turning and it's going to start changing even faster now?
I think so. I think it's been a long time coming. There's people who came way before me that have been fighting for this for a while now. And everything from people in sports management to the media, outsports.com has always chronicled this. I think we're in an environment where you're gonna hear them, and I can't wait until an athlete coming out is old news or no news. That would be so ideal for me.
Yeah.
And
I think that would kind of be like the sign of we've arrived, when nobody even pays attention to it happening, and it literally doesn't warrant a CNN news alert some days when someone comes out.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about very quickly, because we have a little bit of time. I'd love to talk a little bit about your music, which, by the way, I was listening to the playlist that you sent me, and I was really, really enjoying. I have so many comments. We're going to need to talk later. But could you tell people a little bit about your musical career? Because this is a whole other side of you that kind of blew my mind. So you're not just really smart and not just really talented on the baseball field, but you're also a songwriter and a musician. How did this all come to be?
Well, as a kid playing baseball, I played on the travel ball tournament circuit. So, played down in Florida, Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. So I got into country music, and I started just playing it, going to concerts, and then that eventually turned into writing country music. So that's what I do now in the off season. I live in Nashville, and I write songs for country music artists.
Wow.
So,
And again, as now an out songwriter too, has this figured at all in sort of the conversations that you're having and the interactions that you're having? Because there has been a lot of, just like baseball, conversations about the progress that's happening in country music too, when it comes to being more inclusive of people who are LGBTQ. So what has that been like?
that's been really cool to see too. I mean, there's been a ton of people recently in country music, probably more than baseball, out and proud. One guy that I look up to a lot is Shane McAnally, because I'm a songwriter and he's a songwriter. He's written #1 hits for lots of different artists, and he's out and proud, and very public about it. And that was actually, like, seeing an article about him was what convinced me to move to Nashville, because I had always played country music and loved it and wrote it, but I never actually thought that somebody like me could write songs for the top artists. So when I saw the thing about him, I was like, I got to do this. Packed my bags and drove my truck down to Nashville, and I've been there ever since.
You sound that it's in itself sounds like a song that you could potentially be writing about.
Yeah.
Just packed the bags, went down, and that was it.
Yeah.
It's just so fascinating to me. You seem to be sort of at the crossroads of a whole lot of progress that's happening right now. You know, as we were talking, I was thinking about, as you talked about the importance of seeing people like you, seeing other out queer athletes, queer songwriters, and what an important influence that was. We often talk, especially at PFLAG, to parents who will call us and tell us, you know, my kid just came out and I'm really scared for them. They're facing a lot of ugly stuff at school. They're facing a lot of ugly stuff in locker rooms.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to those parents about supporting their kids, especially if their kids are into sports? And what would you also say to those kids?
I should have brought my mom on for this.
Next time we'll bring mom.
You would have a better answer than me. First things first, to the parents, the best thing you can do is just love your kid. Like, we're struggling, you know, growing up as a queer person, especially if you're an athlete, is tough. I'm not going to lie. Like, you know, I can say as many positive things as I can possibly say about the environment we're in now, but that's not the case everywhere and in every school or team. We're certainly trying to change that, but, you know, the best thing you can do is support your kid and show them that you still love them. They're going through a tough time, and like, if there's one thing that I could tell my little 14-year-old self playing American Legion baseball, you know, realizing that I felt different than everybody else, and not really knowing how to cope with that, is that just hang in there, keep doing the things that you love, and work as hard as you possibly can at your sport, and, you know, things will get better, and you'll find people, you can meet a guy that you love, you know, you'll find teammates that accept you. You can be a professional baseball player, or a college baseball player, or a high school baseball player, whatever you want to be, or a country music songwriter. You know, who you are shouldn't impact what you do, especially in the day and age that we're in the 2020s. And I hope that, you know, I can lend my voice to that conversation and help do my part in building a more inclusive world for everybody.
You know, I really appreciate what you just said about do what you love. When we talk to parents, a lot of the time, parents have an inclination to sort of try to protect their kids. And we always say, encourage them to do what they love, because if they find what they love, they're also going to find the people who will love them too. That's how you kind of build your clan, and build those people around you. And I think that's so, so, so important. Liz is telling me that we have a lot of comments on the viewer side, and I was wondering if she can pop back in and give us some of what we are seeing there, because I want to make sure everybody gets to hear those. So Liz, if you were there. Oh, there you are. I never know which side.
Yeah, we have some really lovely comments. So I'm going to kind of scroll back through here. A few from Patrice all along, so I'll bring up some of hers. This is why we have to share stories like this. You're never alone. From our friends at PFLAG Olympia, having professional athletes coming out and living their authentic lives is so important because it hits a different demographic than maybe other pro LGBTQIA+ campaigns. Way to help us all take a step toward normalization, which I love. Someone LGBTQIA+ is your friend, your family member, your role model, your neighbor, colleague, and loved one, with lots of pride flags. So true. And Patrice only needed to hear a little more, saying that Patrice is going to share this with their school because it's a really empowering conversation. And it really has been an incredibly empowering conversation. Laura, I love you keeping it real. Bryan, we have made a lot of progress, but it is still tough out there. And I love this. Patrice's 14-year-old son is now listening right now. They are proud allies. I love that. Patrice, thank you so much for watching today. These comments are awesome.
Thank you so much.
A lot of love out here.
Yeah, there is a lot going on out there. Bryan, could you tell us a little bit about, first of all, how do people find you, and what is next for you? It is the off season, which is good for your writing, but sad for the rest of us. I'm already looking towards April. It's a long way off.
Yeah. Next for me is, being back in Nashville, training. I work out every day, getting ready for spring training already. So we have a couple months to go, but that's already on my mind. And continuing to write country songs and try to progress that forward as well. So I'm working hard and just plugging away, still doing the things that I love to do. And you can find me on pretty much all social media sites at Bryan Ruby Official. Twitter, I'm at the Bryan Ruby. It's Bryan with the Y, Ruby with the Y. But Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Bryan Ruby Official.
Thank you. And one last question from me, because we do talk to allies a lot. What would you say, because we know we reach a lot of allies out there, how can allies in sports start changing it up? So you talked about paying attention to language, but is there anything else you would ask of them or ask them to become more aware about?
This is a tough one. Maybe this isn't like first and foremost on their minds, but I would say especially for the male sports teams, like the ones where you might not see a lot of out athletes, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, soccer, where there aren't a lot of us visible yet. I would say just assume that they're already there, because statistically speaking, they are. If there's 30 guys on a baseball team, probably 2 or 3 of them are in the queer community. So wherever you are, whatever sport you're in, just because you can't see people like us doesn't mean they're not there. And that's not an excuse for saying some of those homophobic comments just to try to sound cool and stuff like that. It's I think if you do hear those comments, especially as an ally, it would mean the world to me, or it would have as a closeted athlete a couple years ago, if I had had a teammate that had heard some of those comments and spoken up and say, hey, that's not cool to say. But especially because at that time I wasn't comfortable enough speaking up myself. It can be a really scary thing to try to stop some of that behavior when you're trying to stay closeted, when you're afraid. So allies, as much as you can support people like us, the better, with your language, with supporting Pride Nights, all that good stuff.
I love the advice. Assume we're there, because we are. Bryan, you are incredible, and we are so excited that you are here. And so I'm so proud of everything that you are doing. It makes me so excited thinking about the future and what it's going to mean for everybody. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And please, if you ever want to come back and tell us about what you're doing, we would love to have you back.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Bryan. And thanks, Liz.
Good to see you both.
And that's another show. I think that was show number 80 or 81. Who knows? But we'll be back again to do another show, another conversation next week. Always inviting some good friends along, and we hope that you'll be here. We wrap up the same way every single week since we have started this, reminding you to run fast, to laugh hard, and to most of all, be kind. And please, if you have not yet done it, please go get yourself vaccinated. My name is Jean Marie Nevada. I work at PFLAG. You can find us at pflag.org. We hope to see you next week on Something to Talk About Live. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.